Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. That's it. I just need a good morning back. Thank you. Thanks. We're going to continue on with our series on followership, and we're going to continue by talking about last week. I know that redefining the idea of followership versus discipleship might have caused some tension, and I say that because of the text messages that I got this week. So we are going to quickly address them. Daryl gets to be the person that I call out because he and I went back and forth for a bit on this. And so let's talk about that. Let me first ask the question, does anybody have, when we were talking about the difference between discipleship and followership last week, did that perk your ears in a way that said, I don't agree with this, I don't understand this, he's wrong, anything like that? It was just Daryl. Good. Not really. It wasn't. What he and I went back and forth with was follower and disciple get interchanged so much, even in our own brains. That's what we've grown up with. And what we talked about last week was that being a disciple is the individual, your everyday contribution, your decision, you're locking into this, you're following a leader, Jesus. That's you being a disciple on your own, individually. And followership is us, as a group, collectively, joining in together as a community, moving forward with a common goal and our leader, Jesus. I wrestled with this for more hours than is not embarrassing, and so this is what I came up with: is that Jesus, God, from the very beginning, has created community for us to move forward collectively. He paired up Adam and Eve. It wasn't just one, it was both of them. The covenant with Moses was descendants as numerous as everything, just big. Israel, you are God's people. He is your God. Community. The church, we are all community, and community is not a recommendation. Followership, in the sense that we have a communal leader that we are all following as individual disciples, and a collective followership, it's not just a casual hint that he gives us throughout Scripture. Time and time and time again, he doesn't just say, and you should also be in a group. He just creates community. We're going to get a lot more into this, but I want you guys to kind of absorb that idea in this community, in this room right now. You are community. So we're going to go one by one here, and we're going to talk about how good you are at being in this community. So who's going to go first? Obviously, we're not going to do that because, if I start, then I'm bad at it, and then everybody can just say ditto after that. I don't think that we get in enough to the idea that we are a family. And it's not just that we are a family, it's that God created this family. And he didn't just create this family, he created this for us to need this family. And then collectively, we move forward with him as our leader in this followership. Did that help, hurt? Did it change anything? Yes, sir.
It seems like a totally different skill set.
Yeah.
To say that each of us should be following Jesus than to say all of us are going to follow Jesus in a group.
Right.
I mean, if I want to go on a trip and it's just me, it's a totally different skill set than if I want this whole church to go on a trip together.
Correct.
And the things I have to think about and tolerate and be excited about, it's a whole different list than just being good at getting from point A to point B on my own.
That is the nail on the head. The reason this is a difficult thing to kind of differentiate between discipleship is because we're so good as specifically American Christians on doing things on our own. Figure it out, do this. And I feel like Oakdale as a whole is pretty good about community. If you don't believe that, try moving. There will be more people show up at your house than you know what to do with. We do that, and I appreciate that. And I think that is the tip of the iceberg as to where we need to be going as a group. I wasn't necessarily going to do this. I thought about this, but we're going to do this. If we are a community, if we are a collective followership, what does that look like for us? This isn't rhetorical. What does that look like that's different than how you grew up, how we're doing things now? What's that we're awesome at, in 10 more weeks, when I'm finished teaching and you guys are experts, what's that look like as a congregation, as a family, as a community here in this followership if we are moving forward with Jesus as our leader and we're in lockstep with each other?
I think it's a tough question. It's a good question. And I think it's the way that the church is built. The first thing that comes to mind is transparency and grace. That's two things. So first two things that come to mind. But I think about, if I have a fear of getting up and telling you my struggles in my walk with Christ, because I'm afraid that my community won't accept it, won't give me grace, won't help me through it. That's if it's done correctly, then it should look like I'm struggling with this, and please help me. As opposed to the fear of it. And that's not Christ putting the fear in me. That's somebody else on the other side. So I think that's transparency and reliance on your family as opposed to self-reliance.
I think the intentionality to making sure that we are, because our lives can so easily get so busy, so being intentional of knowing each other, being each other's lives, and if someone goes missing, in the sense of not being here, that we're intentional about showing up and not just go on with our day and get busy and then we're not there and people get to fall away.
Well, and so the opposite of that is even true, because if you're really in a community, if you're not going to be here, other people know why. You know what I mean? So it's also on you as part of the community, not just to be the lost sheep that people come after. You're 100% right, but it's also, you get the opposite of that too.
Well, I think when knowing why, you have to be okay to be brave enough to get in the ick with them, because so often you know
Yes.
why and you just don't want to ask, you don't want to bring
Correct.
it up, it's awkward and not fun.
Agreed. Here's a fun story from Clark last week. The kids were over in children's worship when we did the deacon thing, and so Lila, my daughter, asked about that, and so they pulled up the live stream at home and they watched the whole thing. Lila wanted to see it. And so we're talking about this in the car, just me and the kids, and so Clark said, "Oh, so you're a deacon now?" And I said, "Yes, I am." Pause this. The week before, we had helped Corey Doss move a bunch of stuff out of his garage into a pod because they were moving to Florida. And he was like, "What can I help with?" And I was like, "Sorry, buddy, it's all just heavy stuff now. There's nothing. It's nothing for For kids to move, it's just going to be the big people that are moving the big heavy stuff at this point. Back to the car, Clark says, so you're a deacon now? And I said, yes. And so then he said, so does that mean you help people carry their heavy stuff? Yeah, buddy. That's exactly what that means. But it's not just me, and it's not just the deacon. Like, that's it. Like, we just help carry the heavy stuff. What else does it look like?
You mentioned a leader. I think when you have a leader of a group, the leader has to struggle with the difference between being a leader and a follower. I've wondered sometimes if that's not the meaning of the verse where elders are worthy of double honor. They know how to lead and they know how to follow.
Agreed.
So it's the fine art of discretion in a leader where when you're raising your kids, the term we use is you pick your battles.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're a leader and you're leading the community, you have to balance what's good for bringing the community together, but what are those things that keep it together because of maybe something you have to do as part of your leading.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we don't talk, we like to talk about leadership. I appreciate what you said
Yeah.
last week, because everybody's supposed to be a leader. Well, a follower has their part, but when you have a responsibility for both,
Right.
that's a little tough.
It is. It is. That dual citizenship in both leadership and followership. And those two things will rub off on each other quite a bit. Being a good follower usually leads into being a good leader, and also vice versa. I'll let you guys deal with that one all this week and let Brandon deal with that next week. Let's talk about some weird stuff, huh? I think that we live in a time, and this isn't like I'm 42 years old. I wasn't around 5,000 years ago, so I don't know every community that's ever existed. But I will say this. I feel like now, in the time that we're living, because of social media and other things, this might be the most jaded generation of people living, because we can always find the negative side to everything. And unfortunately, we've been burned by so many people that have been put in front of us for whatever reason. I did this list a couple of weeks ago. If you guys want to add to this, you can. Some people that have had either leadership roles or just celebrities of sorts that we had admiration for, that have kind of dropped the ball. Bill Cosby, Richard Nixon, Lance Armstrong, Milli Vanilli, if you're old enough. Tiger Woods, Bill Clinton, any televangelist. They've been put on this pedestal, and then when they fall, then we go, well, if it can be them, then it can be anybody, so I can't trust anybody. And especially with people in leadership, because we've all been burned by people who are in a leadership position or political whatever, and they've fallen from grace. And so we go, well, I mean, I've lost respect for not just that person, but the position, that role, everything. Like I'm lost on that. We have a hard time giving authority its due respect. In this congregation, I feel like we have two leaders, or two sets of leaders. It's one and then a very, very distant two, no offense to the elders. But it's Jesus, God, and then it's the elders, and then it's the rest of us. And then even for the elders, like they still fall into the dual role of also followers. Like that's a weird thing. I'll have a Venn diagram next week for that that explains that really poorly also. Does somebody want to open up Numbers 12, 1 through 10? Daryl, I thought you were really going to step on some of my stuff. We're just going to spend all morning in Numbers like you started, and I'm just going to carry on through that. And actually, we're not going to do all the way through 10 because some of it's more graphic than I want for this morning. Where's my app? There we go. So just like... Oh, yeah, it is 1 through 10. That'll be great. Somebody want to read Numbers 12, 1 through 10? If nobody wants to, I'll do it, but it'd be cool if you did. Okay.
Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of the Cushite wife who he had married a Cushite. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses, they asked? Hasn't he also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. Now Moses was a very humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth. Once the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, "Come out to the tent of meeting, all three of you." So the three of them came out. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of a cloud. He stood at the entrance to the tent and summoned Aaron and Miriam. When they both stepped forward, he said, "Listen to my words. When a prophet of the Lord is among you, I reveal myself to him in visions. I speak to him in dreams. But this is not true of my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak face to face, clearly, not in riddles. He sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?" The anger of the Lord burned against them, and he left them. When the cloud lifted from above the tent, there stood Miriam, leprous like snow. Aaron turned towards her and saw that she had leprosy.
The paraphrasing of the rest of this goes, Aaron begs Moses to heal her. Moses says to God, "Please heal her." And God says, if her father had spit in her face, wouldn't she be sent outside of the town for 7 days? So let's do that. So send her out for 7 days. And then she goes and she spends time outside of the community for 7 days, and nobody moves on. They don't continue their march until she comes back in, and then she's better, and she lives after that. Where is this weird story going? When we talk about respecting authority and leadership, in this very important situation, the two subordinates to the 2A, 2B behind Moses go, "Hey, we're just as important as he is. We'll be in charge of this deal." And God hears that and goes, oh no, you will not. I have a very specific thing going on here, and you will not ruin that. And then he's very clear. He set up a leadership, and then the grumbling comes, and God sets that straight. Have we grumbled against leadership of any kind ever? Do you know what's really easy to do is complain. It is so easy to do, to talk about what's wrong, to talk about, you can even a little bit armchair quarterback it and talk about how much better you would be at whatever this is supposed to be. When we do that, we've stepped out of the followership role that God has assigned us, and we've moved into a leadership role, and unfortunately, we've supplanted that leader with ourselves. We're not just saying, like, I can work alongside them. It's, I can do a better job. They're not that important. Trying not to jump forward too much in this. I'm not going to read the entire book of Jonah, but somebody want to paraphrase the story of Jonah real quick?
God comes to Jonah, says, "Go to Nineveh." Jonah says, "No," and flees halfway across the world, gets swallowed by a fish in a storm, and he goes, "Why?" God's like, "Well, you're going to go to Nineveh." Jonah repents, gets spit out,
There it is. That was well done. That was perfect. Yes, that's the story of Jonah. If you guys didn't hear that, come see Josh afterwards. He's the one in the orange vest. So we've got another example here of the leadership going to a person and saying, this is your role, go do this. And the person going, no, I'm in charge. I will make the decisions here. I will not be a part of this for X number of reasons. And he's got his reasons. They are terrible people. They shouldn't be saved, right? And he runs away. So we've got grumbling, we've got infighting, and we've got just fleeing. We're going to read the first 5 books of the Bible and see how Israel was really terrible about following God's leadership. So if you guys will open to Genesis 1. That's the entire story of the Israelites, is God does miraculous things as the leader, bringing you out, doing all of these things. I'm going to do amazing things through you guys. Numbers 13. We can just go right on to Numbers 13. No. Which is what Daryl talked about this morning. It's the spies in being sent into the land. So 12 spies get sent in, 2 come back and go, we got this. We can definitely do this. This is the land God has promised to us. We've got this. He's got our back. We're definitely going to do this. And the 10 go, definitely not. There's no way we can do this. And then on top of that, they went and spread rumors about all of the things that were in the land that would stop them from being able to take the land. We were grasshoppers in their eyes, or in our own eyes to them, and that's how they saw us also. So there's 0 chance that we can do this. And then that changes to, I can't believe that God let us out here just to die. What kind of God is he? You know what we need? We need a real king who will take us back to Egypt. That's actually, chapter 14, verse 4. So they said to one another, let's appoint a leader and return to Egypt. Notoriously bad at following. God has a very specific plan for the Israelites. You're going to cross over. The original plan was all of you get to go together. And once you're there, I'm going to give you the entire land, everything there. People that are living there, we're going to kill them all, every single one of them. If you don't believe me, just keep reading. That's not an exaggeration. Literally kill everybody, start over, it's your land, do whatever you want with it. And so then we get the grumbling and the turning away from God, and God goes, none of you get in. Not a single one of you. This generation will die before you get to cross over into the land. Further on from that, Moses and Aaron are listening to them grumble about there's no water, there's no water, there's no water. And they're like, fine, you want water? Here you go. Tap, tap on the rock with the staff. Water pours out. They all drink. Livestock have water. Everybody's happy again. God pulls Moses and Aaron aside and says, that wasn't the plan, buddy. I had something for you, and you're taking this upon yourself. Now neither of you get to go in either. These are all really sad stories. But what I want you to take away from this is the absolute emphasis on not just individual following and being a disciple, but as a collective group, us banding together and following. God created this community. They could have accomplished anything with their numbers. They could have done anything that they wanted. And instead they chose to have a terrible attitude, to say that they could do a better job. Let's get somebody to replace Moses, which in turn replaces God, and then let's just go back to Egypt.
I think this also gets into the idea that for a long time as Christians, at least my theological upbringing, if you want to call it that,
Sure.
said kind of the core idea is that I take on salvation through baptism, and then I try to stay decent, and then I get to go to heaven,
Right.
which is very individualistic.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with community.
But all of these stories that we're looking at assume something different. They assume that there's something to do here on earth in between the time from when I become a follower to when I retain or get my rest at the end.
Yes.
And if all we're holding on to is the salvation and the rest at the end, then why would we read the stories that have to do about the stuff that we need to do in between that time?
Correct.
Why would we take the time to invest in the skills to do the things that we need to do in the meantime as a group?
Why are we here? If community isn't a necessity, then this is an absolute waste of time, because I can read my Bible on my own. But we were never called for that. The equipping, the sharpening, however you want to say, comes within this. The skill set that we have, that we will obtain in followership to reach out to our community, comes in community. Yes.
Well, of course, go back to our mission statement, or Christ's mission statement, love God and our neighbors. So the whole reason we were texting back and forth before you threw me on the bus today is, to me, you cannot be a disciple without following. Otherwise, and to love God, love the upward but not want the outward, are you really a disciple?
Right.
Or to love others and not love God, you're not a disciple either. So it's like they go hand in hand. So, going back to that old adage, I love Jesus, I don't love the church. Well, can you really call yourself a disciple if you love Christ but you don't love his people?
Right.
So we were created for community. Father, Son, and Spirit were community before we were even here. So why do that?
John, will you spend some time defining the Trinity really quick? I'm just kidding. Romans 13, 1 through 7. If you guys will take a second to turn there and read along with me. Every person is to be subject to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For the rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same, for it is a servant of God. For is a servant of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. For it is a servant of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore it is necessary to be in subjugation, not only because of wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For because of this you also pay taxes, for rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Pay to all what is due to them, tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom, respect to whom respect, honor to whom honor. That one's a tough one. Don't love that. I wouldn't say that I consider all the things the government does in my best interest or your best interest. However, I don't know what else to do with that other than respect my authorities. I mean, like, it's, like, I couldn't, I mean, like, it can't be more clear. And at the same time, super, super hard to do. What do you guys think about that passage?
I think context is important.
Okay?
Because if you take it at complete face value, black and white, then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego should have been condemned to hell for disobeying and not bowing down as the king told them to do.
Agreed.
The apostles were told not to teach and preach by the government, and they did it anyway.
Right.
It's very, I think there's a lot more to it than just blindly obeying what the government says to do.
So then it's what the government has told us to do, but through the filter of Christ.
Correct.
Anybody agree, disagree with that? Like that idea? Yes, sir.
So in general, the civil authorities are a good thing. Without that, there would be anarchy, and evil would run even more rampant than it is today.
Correct.
But since in general, the civil authorities are a good thing, we're supposed to be subject to them unless they disagree with what God commands. And then we have plenty of instances, like you just noted, where if the civil authorities disagree with what God commands, we're to follow what God commands.
Correct. So let's lay all those things out right now.
Well, I think that's the big problem that we're going to run into repeatedly in this study, is that we're going to go, followership's great, we should do what people say, we should work together, but it's like, up to what point? Like,
Well, so then you build your hierarchy of leader.
well, I mean, so like in this class,
Sure.
you say things about followership and discipleship, and people disagree with that. What is the appropriate process and method to healthily air that disagreement, right? And that's a very mild point, but at a certain point it becomes about more important things.
Right.
At what point can I healthily and respectfully disagree with established leadership about salvation issues? And what's the proper approach to do that? And I think that's the big caveat that makes followership hard and uncomfortable.
Ah, yes, agreed. Agreed. We're going to talk about that, but I'm just going to let everybody stew in that for a little bit. Yes, ma'am.
Some of the people that you listen to
Mm-hmm.
leaders or people of high status,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if they would have had people calling them to an accountability.
Any amount of accountability.
Right. I have a
Yes.
friend who calls it calling you up
Mm-hmm.
because they want you to live in abundance. And I feel like if that is we see people who aren't living their best life, including leadership, then we hold them accountable. We talk to them. We call them up. We have discussions. That should be on the table at any time. That those circles of conversation can happen both ways. And I think when you do that and you come at an aspect of humbleness, then it works.
Yes.
And I feel like the people you mentioned, if the people who are watching it happen would have held them up, held them accountable, then maybe they would have made a better choice.
Wait, are you saying that if there was a community of people that were all working towards a goal together, that there would have been turmoil avoided?
Possibly, yes.
We should do a whole class on that.
But then it goes back to what you were just saying. We have lots of communities of people trying to reach a common goal, but then they split over color of carpet.
Right. That's by the way, that's not like a funny instance. That's legit happened before.
Yeah, so kind of going back to Dylan's question, it's like, how do you, when we're all trying to follow the same leader, and, we all even respect the elders, but we don't read scripture the same. How do we get to a place where we can still follow and still work together? Other than going and starting a new church.
Well, I think that's the answer. That's always the answer. Church splits are always going to be the answer. Never confront anybody over any problems that you have. Always run. I mean, it worked. It worked for Jonah till the fish part. So with followership, this is going to answer you guys' question just a little bit. With followership, what you assume as becoming a follower in this community, the two things that you can do is, number one is we're all followers, right? So last week I did the slide of everybody that has a more important role in the church than you, and it was blank. Afterwards, the guys running slides were, hey, nothing came up on that. And I was like, yeah, that was the point. But that's it. Like it is very flat as far as the hierarchy within followership. Okay, we have different roles, we have different things, many parts, one body. That's really important. One body, but also many parts. Okay, so the idea is that we established that it's all here, and so because of that, you assume a certain amount of humility. This is my role. I'm not better than this. I'm not worse than this. This is where I am. By the way, if you think that you're worse than that, this is an opportunity to bring you back up to the level that you actually belong in. Like, you don't have a lesser role. You have an equal role with everybody else in this room. But, so with that, when it comes to addressing the tough things, the things that you consider a salvation issue, how do we respect authority that we feel is leading us in a direction that is not that? And the two pieces of that are humility and relationship. Because, Dylan, if I never had talked to you before and I was like, I used to see you whenever you had long hair and I like that better. I wish you would do that again. This haircut is stupid. It's not stupid. It looks great. You look great. But like, if I came to him like that, I mean, wow, like he's probably never going to talk to me again, and rightfully so. What a jerk this guy would be to do something like that. But I know Dylan. Also, I respect Dylan, and whatever he wants to do with his hair is not a salvation issue. I mean, it was good hair. It was a lot. It was awesome. But you've got to build that relationship, and if you've got an issue with the eldership here, then my first suggestion would be go talk to them. You don't even have to talk to them about the thing that's the problem. Go get to know them. Find out things about them, their family, what they do for a living, or if they're not working anymore, what they used to do, or any number of things, and build that relationship. Find about them. Also, allow them to learn about you. That's a relationship. And when you build those things together, there'll be a couple of different things that happen. Is one, maybe you understand where they're coming from. You build that actual bridge together, and so then you go, oh, okay, I get it now. I understand. You know, this thing that I thought was so important is actually a piece of a much bigger thing, and I've grown from this, and so I've got to, take this opportunity. There's a book by an author named Adam Grant. The book's called Think Again. Anybody? Yep, the person who recommended it to me. So it's fascinating, and it's just basically about having the humility and presence of awareness and situation to be able to step back from a situation and go, okay, how do I, I wasn't right about this. How do I need to kind of reorient myself? And it's a fascinating book. So read that sometime. But this is an opportunity to do that. Pull back for a little bit and go, okay, let's see if I'm in the right or if I'm in the wrong in this after you get to know them. If you still believe that this is a problem, that this is something, now we go and talk to them. Because we have that thing established, and if we really think that this is that, this is a crux, what do you mean you said Jesus didn't really die? That kind of big deal. Of course we'd be like, well, okay, maybe he shouldn't be an elder in church if he doesn't believe in Jesus dying and coming back. That's fairly important to this situation. So we go and we talk to them about that thing, but you've got to have the humility to first of all accept, hey, maybe I'm wrong. We do that very rarely, just in life. But then also we got to build that relationship. Please, please, please build that relationship. And you'll grow either way from it. Yes, sir.
So I think when you talk about discipleship or followership, you've got to ask the question to what and to whom do I belong?
Yes.
So another word for followership might be membership. And what I've found in my experience in ministry is people don't like that word near as much as discipleship.
Right.
So I'll just open up this grenade and throw it out there. There are some that will say, hey, there's nowhere in the Bible where it says I have to place membership, so I'm not doing that.
Sure.
I would say I would agree with you on that, but there is plenty of places where, like Paul says, you are members of one body. And I think we need to declare that publicly, that we're willing to be together. But one of the things I've seen is when people say, I don't want to claim membership, one of those reasons has been, I don't want to submit myself under any kind of leadership. So I can make my own decisions, and if I want to just take off, I can, because I never said to those elders that I would follow them, or that I would be under any kind of authority.
Right.
And I get to decide where my money goes. I don't have to give towards this, I give to what I want to give.
Right.
And so we don't want to belong to certain things. We want to be affiliated, but we want the control to do what we want. So when we talk about followership, I love Jesus, but I want to decide who I hang out with and where I go and what I have to submit to and what I don't.
It's the group buy-in. That's it. It's the absolute group buy-in. This is going to sound like a hard line, and I don't mean it to sound this. You're either in the group or you aren't. I don't want it to sound that harsh, but either you're buying in or you're kind of on the fringe. Like you're either with the group or you're not with the group. And I'm not saying you're even against the group, because like maybe you want the group to do well, but there's a difference between being here and being a part of the group.
There's a difference between auditing a class and being in the class.
Correct. Yeah. So in followership, in respecting authority, here's your homework. I need you to go home, and I need you to create your hierarchy of leadership in your life. You answer to somebody, whether you want to or not. If you work at a job that you're not the owner of, you answer to somebody. If you own your own job, you still answer to somebody, and it may just be the government for taxes and regulations or whatever it may be, but you answer to somebody. Across the board, we all answer to somebody. If you're married, you answer to your wife. But you've got to build your hierarchy of leadership. Who's number one and who's number two? And what I'm really hopeful for is that there's a big, gigantic space between those things. Because there's not anybody else. Last week, 2 weeks ago, some other time when Daryl was talking about the names of God, he talked about there's God, and he says there's no one else before me. I'm gonna butcher this, and he's not saying like there's God, I'm here and I'm above the other gods. It's I am here and no other gods can be in my presence, and I am God. So the question is he God to you? And if he is, then what we can start with in our followership is collectively we have a leader. And that doesn't answer all the problems, but it answers a lot of the big ones. And as far as respecting authority, filtering down through that, if God is the filter that we run everything else through, then everything else is okay. You don't even have to agree with it, but it'll be okay. Any parting thoughts? That's all that I have, so I'm opening this up to anybody who hated everything that I just said. Well, if you don't raise your hands, then I'm going to think that you loved it, and I'm going to come do this again sometime, so it's on you. Okay. This was a lot. Come talk to me if you have questions. I'm very willing. I'll be in Texas all week. So call me at night. I literally will have nothing to do. Talk to your elders. They desperately want to have a relationship with you. Talk to Daryl. He doesn't have that much going on.
Just golf.
Just golf Monday through Friday. I got to get that gig. This week, build your hierarchy of leadership. Not just like 1 through 10 or whatever, but also your percentage of leadership that they own in you. That's all that I have. Let's pray and we'll get out of here. God, as we struggle with community and you as our leader and how to reconcile each other to us, and then also how do we reconcile others to you, it gets messy. And how we follow the rules that are given to us in this world versus the rules given to us by you, and making sure that we're following the things that you want us to do. God, be that person in our life. Be that leader. Be the leader, the only leader that we all follow. God, as we consider this week where you are in our lives, in our hierarchy of leadership, let us place you first. Let us see you as the only one that can lead us. And all other sources of leadership are secondary, if not way below that. God, we love you, and that's why we trust you to lead us. And it's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. You guys are dismissed.